Hello everyone, and welcome to the second video of part 4. So, I think it's time we figured out how to rotate our Tetrominoes. After all, we are only storing the upright version of each Tetromino. Where do we get the rotated versions from? The shapes are stored as one-dimensional arrays in memory, but we humans can see them as two-dimensional matrices. For example, this one can be seen as a 3x3 matrix, 3 rows and 3 columns. Now, how is this helpful? Let's take this 3x3 matrix filled with the numbers going from 0 to 8 as an example. And let's say that we want to rotate it 90 degrees clockwise. Such a rotation is quite easy for us humans to understand, but not so much for computers. You see, throughout this whole process, the original matrix is stored as a one-dimensional array. We've just been using a formula to map our one-dimensional array to this two-dimensional matrix. This is what we've been doing with our board since part 2, where we figured out this formula. For example, to figure out the value of a certain cell, we take its x and y coordinates, plug them in our formula, and the result is the index we should access in our one-dimensional array. The value we find should be placed in the x and y position. If we want to complete our whole matrix, we simply apply this formula to every single cell. Continuing in the same vein, what if we could figure out another formula that would map our one-dimensional array to the rotated matrix directly? To try and find this magic formula, let's take the one-dimensional representation of our rotated matrix and see how each value has been shifted. For example, 0 has been shifted by 2 to the right, 1 has been shifted by 4, 2 has been shifted by 6, 3 has been shifted by 2 to the left, so minus 2, and so on. We can note that the resulting values are kind of symmetrical, and their sum is equal to 0. So clearly, there is some kind of pattern hidden in here, but nothing obvious is popping up. A mathematical representation of such a behavior doesn't naturally come to mind. When we see some kind of pattern but find it hard to represent, generally a good method would be to take multiple different examples, then try to analyze the most basic case of our problem. It's probably not going to give us the definitive answer, but it'll give us a clue. But before we do that, I want you to understand why I filled this matrix with the numbers ranging from 0 to 8. It's simple. I filled each cell with its index in the one-dimensional array. The interesting property of such an approach is that after the rotation, each cell is going to keep track of its original position. If I pick this cell, which has an index of 0 in the rotated matrix, the value it contains is 6. So I know that its position in the original matrix is the 6th index. This property will come in handy in a moment. Now, to try and figure out our magic formula, let's take these 2x2, 3x3, and 4x4 matrices. Rotate them 90 degrees clockwise. Let's also note the properties of each matrix. If there is a pattern, it's most likely related to those properties. In the case of square matrices like these, the only property we have is the dimension. Now, let's pick the most basic case. X equals 0 and y equals 0. We want to figure out what index to access in our original matrix to find the value that should be placed in here. For the 2x2 matrix, we know that the desired index is 2. Why? Because we said earlier, the value of each cell in the rotated matrix gives us its original index in the non-rotated matrix. So, we want our magic formula to give us exactly that original index, which is 2 in this case. How can we represent 2 using our matrix properties? Well, it's just its dimension. In the case of 3x3, the desired value is 6. Coincidentally, we can easily represent 6 using our matrix properties. It's just 2 times the dimension of our matrix. For the 4x4 matrix, the desired value is 12. Again, it's just 3 times the dimension of our matrix. If we keep going like this, let's say up to a matrix of m size, I think it's pretty safe to say that our desired value is going to be the size of our matrix multiplied by that same size minus 1. Great, we can see that this formula applies correctly to every single one of our matrices, at least for the most basic case, which is 0, 0. If we move to a different cell, the output of our formula is wrong. It's obviously incomplete. The formula we created completely ignores the x and y values. They are not plugged in. Its only purpose is to work for the most basic case. To try and complete our formula, we need to take into consideration the x and y we ignored. Let's go through the same process again. For 2 by 2, we can see that every time we increment x, the value of the cell is decrementing by a constant. That constant happens to be 2, which is coincidentally the size of our matrix. For 3 by 3, it decrements by 3, the size of our matrix. 4 by 4, it decrements by 4, again, the size of our matrix. For a matrix of m dimensions, I think it's safe to say that for each x increment, we should subtract the dimension from our result, which means minus x dimensions. We can now see that our formula works correctly for the first row of our matrices, but it fails as soon as we increment the y, again because we haven't taken it into consideration. Every time we increment y, the value of the cell is incremented by 1. Same for 3 by 3 and 4 by 4. So it's safe to say that for each y increment, we can add 1 to our result, which means plus y. And there we have it, a formula that takes the x and y as inputs and tells us how to access our original one-dimensional array to build our rotated matrix. Let's take this 3 by 3 matrix and apply our formula on it. For the cell at the position 0, 0, we replace x, y, and the dimension in our formula, and it gives us 6. All we have to do is access the 6th element in our one-dimensional array and put its value there. Same goes for 1, 0. The result is 3, so we access it and put its value. To build our rotated matrix, we simply apply this formula on every single cell. And there we have it. We managed to build this rotated version of the matrix. And I like to think that this is a very elegant solution. We don't need to make extra copies, we don't need to store the rotated version of our matrices, and it's computationally very fast. It's just additions, subtractions, and multiplications. Great, so far we have figured out our formulas to build our matrices at 0 degrees rotation and 90 degrees clockwise rotation. We can find the formulas for the 180 and 270 degrees rotation by applying the same method. Take different examples, solve for the most basic case, then try to complete the formula. I highly encourage you to pause the video and try to figure out the next formulas on your own. You can use the steps I previously took as guidance. The logic is exactly the same. Once done, we will end up with these formulas. Each one of them allows us to input the x and y position of the cell we wish to access in our rotated matrix. Then they will output the index we should access in our original array to get the corresponding value. Now that most of the work has been done, all we have to do is to implement these rotations. Obviously, our Tetromino needs to be able to track its current rotation. So we are going to create an enumeration, and it's going to contain all of the possible rotation for our Tetromino. Note that I have created it inside of Tetromino, and that makes sense because rotating is a property of Tetrominoes. For now, I'll make the enumeration public, but I might change it to private if it's not used anywhere else. So, the possible rotations we can have is up, right, down, and left. Obviously, we need a variable to hold the current rotation, so we go rotations. Actually, I think rotation is a better name for the enumeration, because each member of the enumeration only represents one rotation. And we'll name it current rotation, and inside of the Tetromino constructor, we will just initialize it to up by default. Great, now we need functions to be able to rotate clockwise or counterclockwise. We can go void rotate clockwise, and then void rotate counterclockwise. For example, if our current rotation is up, we want it to become right. If it's right, we want it to become down. If it's down, it becomes left. And if it's left, it becomes up. And there's something special about enumeration that you might notice. If I hover over up, for example, I can see that the compiler has given it the value of 0. Right has been given the value of 1, down 2, and left 3. And that's one of the properties of enumerations. They are given integer values starting from 0. We can also specify a specific value. For example, if I give up a value of 55, right is going to have 56, down 57, left 58, and so on. You can give any of them any values you want. But in this case, starting from 0 is good. Now, why did I mention this? Now that we know this, we know that we can cast them to integers to get their values, work with them however we want, and then cast them back to being a rotation. So if we want to go to the next rotation, all we have to do is cast the current rotation to an integer. Then we increment that integer by 1, and then we cast the result back to being a rotation. And this is going to advance our rotation by 1. But we should never forget the case of going from left to up. In this case, we need to go from 3 back to 0. One way of doing that would be to just take the modulus of 4. 4 because we have 4 possible values in here, and using modulus to iterate over values in a circular way is quite common. In case the value is left, which is 3, we increment it, it becomes 4, and 4 modulus 4 is 0, so we go back to 0. For the counterclockwise rotation, we just need to cast the current rotation, and then subtract 1 from it, then cast it back to being a rotation. But we have the case where our current rotation is up. If we rotate counterclockwise, we need to go to the left. So this means going from 0 to 3. So if we subtract 1 from 0, we will end up with minus 1. And in this case, we cannot use the modulus, because the modulus of a negative number is probably going to give us a negative number, which is not what we want. And also, the modulus of a negative number is implementation defined, which means that its behavior may change if we change compilers. It's not that big of a deal in our case, but it makes it less desirable. So we don't have a choice. If the current rotation is up, all we have to do is assign left to it. So we go if current rotation equals rotation up, then we go current rotation equals rotation left. Otherwise, we just subtract our rotation. And that's it. So now we are able to change the rotation of our Tetromino. Now all we have to do is to make sure that our draw function uses the right formula depending on the rotation. So let's initialize our cell to false and use a switch. Also, Visual Studio does something very fancy. If you start typing switch, you should get this snippet in here. If you press tab and then write the name of an enumerated variable, in our case it's current rotation, and then press enter, it's going to generate all of the cases of your enumeration. This is quite useful if you have a lot of enumerations. Switch statements work really well with these. So, in case it's up, our cell is going to use the usual formula, which is y times dimension plus x. In case it's right, it means that this is a 90-degree rotation. So we use the corresponding formula, the one we figured out together. Down uses the 180-degree formula, and left uses the 270-degree formula. Now let's go to game.cpp. When we create our game, let's try to rotate our Tetromino. For example, we'll start by rotating it clockwise. If we run, we can see that it's pretty much correct. If we try to rotate it once more, it seems to be correct again. But I want to have a more interactive experience. I would like it to rotate when I press a button, just like the player would. Thankfully, Raylib lets us react to key presses very easily. We can use this isKeyPressed function to check if a key has been pressed once. So inside of the update function, we can go f is key pressed, and Raylib defines each key by going key underscore and then the name of the key. In my case, I want the E button to rotate clockwise. So here I go Tetromino dot rotate clockwise. And I want my Q key to rotate counterclockwise. Tetromino dot rotate. Something like this. Let's remove these two initial rotations from our constructor. And now if we launch, now if I press the E key, I can see that my Tetromino is being rotated correctly. Same goes for the counterclockwise rotation. As you can see, we managed to implement the rotations in a very elegant way. Just by figuring out these mathematical formulas, we managed to avoid writing more code just to rotate our matrix. Everything is done mathematically. I don't know about you, but I'm kind of proud of this one. One last thing. If we go to Build, Rebuild Solution, I'm currently getting a warning telling me that I'm getting an implicit conversion. If I double-click on it, it seems to be happening inside of the Raylib wrapper, and in this case it comes from this line thickness. It's actually because I forgot to cast it to float. Now if we compile again, the warning is gone. And making sure that you have no warnings when you compile is very important. You should always deal with warnings as soon as possible. They don't just appear to annoy you, they warn you about potential problems. In this case, it's just a small cast that I forgot to add, but it's always a good idea to keep them clean, so that when an important warning happens, you see it. It doesn't drown inside of the sea of warnings you have. Also, in one of my previous videos, a comment asked me why I didn't use C++ style casting. Why do I use this old C casting style? It's less safe than the C++ counterparts. While that's true, in case of simple casts from int to float or other primitive types, I don't think it's necessary to use C++ style casting. It's just too cumbersome to work with for these simple cases. There's no danger of losing constantness or casting the wrong type. But in case you deal with pointers and other complex types, then yes, you should use C++ style casting. Maybe we'll get to see that in a future video. In any case, that about wraps it up for this video. Make sure to leave a comment and let me know what you think of it. And if you want to see more, make sure to subscribe and like the video. Now stay safe and see you soon.